Side panel complementary. G checkbox. Close button. Close button. Gemini can now.
Hello all, good morning.
Got it button. Menu.
Yeah, today we have another topic. Today is about e-commerce developers, e-commerce designers, and e-commerce owners. See, every founder or every business owner have their e-commerce and started their online shopping and adding their products, product selection page, checkout place, adding the description, adding the details, address, and also the adding the payment methods, right? So these are all having an e-commerce websites. Now when you consider an e-commerce website, if doesn't have a accessible flow and it does not follow an accessibility when you are designing that e-commerce website, and what are the problems and what are the challenges for the e-commerce website owners, or what are the solutions, what are the things can be considered to make e-commerce accessible for everybody. Now every business owner, every e-commerce owner, if you are have a online shopping cart, and you make sure that is used by other types of disabilities, then it is making sure that it is accessible, or your product can be selected and your product can be ordered online. Now let's say there is a chance that when I was selecting the product on your e-commerce store, okay, and if that product does not have an alt text, what is it image about? Now my screen reader will read IMG 9082 HTTPS. It will read like that. When you provide an alt text for all the images of product descriptions of products in your e-commerce website, now let us take, you given a bag, you given a shopping cart, you given all the alt text for your products in your e-commerce. Now what is the experience for me? I went to an e-commerce store. I was pressing G, or I was traveling, navigating to the website using my screen reader. It announces the product description, product name. If you're providing not providing an alt text, it will be difficult for blind users, right? Now, and ask your designers and developers: is it your design work with screen readers and keyboard? If yes, then you are in a good position. If no, then it's a huge problem for your businesses, because there are other opportunities, there are other challenges when you're not making your website or e-commerce accessible, right? Now, this is the thing. And ask your developers that your code, your written code, does it work with assistive technologies like screen reader, voice control? If no, then it's a big problem for you. So all the developers and designers, whatever you are designing, whatever you're writing the code, it should work with keyboard, work with assistive technologies. It should compatible whatever it device may be, right? If not, all the business owners are in trouble. Now, what are the consequences if your website, if your e-commerce product pages, checkout pages, payment gateways are not accessible? What happens? Now, anyway, you have to fix it, right? There are laws like accessibility laws, American Disability Act, Equality Act, European Accessibility Act. There are many laws in different countries which only mandates the e-commerce websites, the online shopping experiences can be accessible for all the person with disabilities, even if they have assistive technology or not. They have to use the website and select the product, add their address, and pay online, and that the user flow should be very smooth. If not, there are laws that laws will have a penalty on each e-commerce websites. The first trigger for all the business owners to make your website, to make your product accessible, is accessible law. Everybody is depending on the law. And just put aside a law for some time. Now imagine you constructed a building, entire building, 4 floors building, and you wanted to change the design of the building. Is it easy? You have to destroy that all the building and make design from the beginning stages. You can retrofit, or you can add some designs after the construction of building. but it takes time, it takes cost, right? Similarly, in the accessibility, if you build an e-commerce website completely and you wanted to integrate accessibility at the end, now that's a big problem for developers. That's a big problem for all the people who are working for that website development, because it is not easy. You know, you have to redesign some components. Because you build some custom JavaScripts, custom components which are not accessible. Even if you add some ARIA properties, still it is not making accessible, or it might have a chance of getting again accessibility issues in the future. So retrofitting accessibility is very time taking process, and it also involves huge cost. But when you start at the beginning of the designing stage, integrating accessibility into your product cycle, it it initially cost free. You can make it very free, because it's just knowledge you have to create for your designers team or a developer team, so that the product gets accessible, right? So first point is, you know you have to follow the law to make your e-commerce website. And the second point is, if you're not considering accessibility from the beginning, you have to fix at the end because of the law, and that requires huge cost and time taking process. And because of that, you know you have some you know want to release some product in the future, and because of these accessibility issues, that product will get delayed, right? Because you have to fix these issues, right? Now, and the third point, most important point is, when your website is accessible, when your e-commerce website is accessible, it reaches to the maximum number of people in this world, right? And even it also benefits the busy user, busy customer. I don't have a time. I was using mobile and I'm browsing your e-commerce website, and I was driving a car. Or drinking a coffee with one other hand. Now I have a little time to scan your web page. I have just glimpse on your e-commerce website. Now, if your e-commerce website have a proper semantic, proper heading structure, I can see it. I can get the glimpse and easily understand for me, right? So making accessibility reaches all the audience, irrespective of the busy, irrespective of the disability people. It reaches maximum number of the people. Whatever the target audience you have, it reaches most of the people, right? So building an accessibility into your environment, building an accessibility into your product, it gets more customers. Even you don't expect those customers, because of your accessibility, you get those customers, right? And the fourth point I can say is, if your website, if your uh, product is accessible, it brings loyalty, it brings trust to the people. Now I'm using, I have an Apple product I was using since 13 years. I don't use for an Apple for showing of something. I use Apple devices for an accessibility reason. Now, when you see my phone, I have an iPad, I have AirPods. All these have an separate accessibility features. Now, which helps in my daily life. Now, this brings the trust. Even if iPhone 16, 17, or 18 doesn't have an impact or doesn't have a change in it, right? People started, scolding Apple for this, doing this. They're not doing creatively. They're not innovating anything. They're simply making the changes of UI, changes of software versions, and they're selling, with a greater cost, right? But for me, I see accessibility. Now we are in the iOS 26. There are a lot more accessibility features were improved. Now that brings trust to me, right? Even Apple does something wrong, I have that trust. I have that loyalty to that brand. So if your website's products are accessible, that brings trust to the people. That brings credibility for the people, and this brings more customers, more business to your organization, right? So when you're checking, or when you're doing an accessibility work in your organization, or you wanted to make your e-commerce website accessible, actually it is very easy. You have to think from an accessibility point of view. It doesn't require a cost, or it doesn't require an infrastructure. No, it required a human to sit calmly and think about accessibility. That's the only thing you needed, right? And the fifth point I would like to say that every person, I'm not saying so, but every person have a chance of getting disability, right? We never know what happens next minute. You might get with an accident, or you might fell in a bathroom, or you can get something and get disabled, right? That may be a temporary disability or a permanent disability. That doesn't matter. You have a chance of probability getting into disability, right? So, you know, even our uh, parents, they get older, right? You get older. We As we grow, we got older, right? Because of the oldness, because of the age increasing, we get loss of vision, we get loss of hearing, and that also makes you disabled, right? Now, with this statement, what we can understand is disability is a growing population. We cannot avoid it, we cannot ignore it, right? Now, if your website, if your product is accessible, you have a chance of reaching those older aging people, and you have a chance of getting more benefits and opportunities into your organization. Now, this sounds very similar, or this sounds very easy to do it, but making an accessibility into your organization is very tough, because no, accessibility testing is not done only one time. It is a continuation program, right? So I have an e-commerce website. If I'm not able to select the product, and select the type of the product and the size of the product, and added my address, my delivery address, and I also wanted to pay it. Now this entire flow is not accessible for me. I have a continuation problem, that I cannot suggest anybody to this website, right? I cannot ask anybody to use this website. Now, imagine in the reverse scenario, I have complete product flow. I'm able to select the product, I'm able to select the size of the product, and I'm able to add an address. And before that address, I have an option to check autofill or address of my options. And after that, the payment is redirected to my entire net banking, and it is asking me the OTP, all these things. So the user flow is very good, very smooth, right? Now, in this scenario, I if I wanted to make more accessible, I cannot ask anybody to test it and fix it. It's a continuation process. Even if I add some more products, even if I add some more stages in the user flow, I still need to check for an accessibility testing, right? Generally, we check for functionality testing all the time, right? Now, the accessibility testing can be tested every time. Whatever you are releasing a new feature, new option, you wanted to add something to that already tested product or already tested website, but still you have to make testing again to make that accessible, or to make that usable for everybody. So yeah, so business owners, e-commerce owners, if your e-commerce website, especially the product selection page, the selection of the type of the product, the checkout flows, the payment gateways, all these pages are not inaccessible, then definitely you are losing many customers, and it's an uncalculated economic expense for all the business people, right? We always think from a business angle, that we are getting income and we wanted to invest in something, right? To growth of your company, and you wanted to invest in digital tools, you wanted to invest in infrastructure for your growth of the company. Now there are some miscellaneous uncalculated expenses. Now think of like this uncalculated expenses is also like an accessibility. You don't think in a different way, but it's good that you have an accessibility knowledge from the beginning. It's good that you are going in a good direction and you don't have uncalculated expenses. But for the product owners, for the e-commerce owners, if your website, if your e-commerce site is not accessible, then definitely this video is for you. Make sure your checkout place, your the product pages on the payment gateways are accessible by only keyboard. Should I able to use only keyboard and select the product and check out and pay the payment? If yes, then you are in the safe zone. So this is about that. If you are not, if your websites If your products is not accessible, contact CAP Accessibility. We are specialized in auditing, consulting for accessibility testing and remediation process, and we have specialized engineers, compliant engineers who are professionals in IAP like CPAC and VAS. We give end-to-end solutions from testing, auditing, and remediation. And we also help enterprises level. We help people to train on accessibility, giving the sensitization from designers and developers to make sure what they build, what they are designing, they have to think from an accessibility point of view. So this is about us. And let's check further an e-commerce website. You can check, you can run an automation, you can add a accessibility overlay there, but definitely those are not accessible. Those only give you 50% of the issues. Those only give you 56% of the issues, but not 100%. Human intervention is 100%, and person with disabilities or end users or real users are must to give the real feedback to for your e-commerce website. And if you want that, we have real users too. We have different diverse disabilities who are also accessibility professionals like me, and we give us a real user feedback for every e-commerce website, and we follow some parameters to give a ranking to that. And we also have an educational approach process for the developers. By seeing our report, they cannot simply fix that issue. By reading that information, by reading that educational approach in report, developers can understand that, and they will not do mistakes in the future. Even if they wanted to add some other future, they don't require accessibility knowledge in the future. Because of this educational report, they can understand what is accessibility. They can implement in the future development cycle. So that's our process. We wanted everybody to make accessibility into their organization and build accessible products which help for all the people in this world. And no, don't think like in software making accessible. Even if your HR, if your employees doesn't know about accessibility, then even if you make your website accessible, that doesn't make any sense, right? So I have a friend who has a company, and he made every website and app in his organization accessible. Now he has a HR. He calls to a deaf person. Now he doesn't know about accessibility, right? So if you find a deaf person, you cannot give a call. You have to mail him or you have to text him. That's the only way you have to go with it, right? So that means every human, every employee, even the HRs, admins, developers, designers, founders, everybody should know about accessibility. If you know about accessibility, then definitely your organization is said to be and going in the accessible way, right? And you cannot have a lawsuits. You can ignore all these things, and you can also bring more customers, bring more end users into organization and make your inclusive organization. That's all. And yeah, thank you for today. We'll
WordCamp
meet in
Technology.
the next meeting, next video. Thank you all. Bye bye.
Call feature. People button collect. More activities in Gemini is main landmark background. Ch- co- Send a reaction. Turn on. Raise hand. More option. It's called option. Cast this meeting one. Recording two of them. Recording panel is open. Also stop take notes with Gemini. Gemini use. Also stop. Stop record. Stop recording. Cancel. Stop.